What's up, poker YouTube? Welcome back to another How to Beat live low stakes poker video. We're going to start a new series, I guess within that series on this channel. It's going to be PLO Tip of the Week. I know a lot of you are likely dabbling in PLO, or maybe you're trying to get your feet wet in PLO. This week's tip, dry sets. Essentially, what do we do with them on flops? A lot of the games that you guys will play in, you'll have, I would say, 95% or more of the time multi-way action on or post-flop. You're going to rarely be heads up, of course, that means. So, what do we do with dry sets as far as like what's kind of our macro strategy? Like if we're in doubt, when we zoom out, what do we do? Essentially, the way that I like to look at it is, first of all, what is the ranking of our set? Do we have top set? Do we have middle set? Do we have bottom set? A lot of times if we have bottom set, I like to play that very cautiously. It doesn't mean you can't bet or lead into the field or anything, but you have to be very mindful that on draw heavy boards, multi-way, your opponent's kind of their collective range is going to be pushing a lot of equity against a dry bottom set. If you face a raise, it's going to be hard to really realize your equity from out of position and really know where you're at in the hand, because your opponents could have middle or top set, but they also could have hands like top two. They could have hands like wrap in top pair, or nut flush draw and a gutter in top pair. So it's hard to know, and a lot of the hands that they're going to raise and willing to be or willing to play for stacks with, those combos are going to be pushing a lot of equity against your dry bottom set. So with bottom set, I like to be very careful, looking to either bet really small, like quarter pot or third pot a lot of the time. And, it does depend a little bit on the texture, but like I said, this is more of a quick macro zoom out. Like, what do I just do when I'm in doubt? I don't know for sure. Bottom set, I'm either looking to like check call or check fold to huge like pot size bets from anybody multi-way, because we're either just crushed or we're flipping at best. And that's the one thing that I'll make very clear to you guys, is that in PLO, especially live low stakes PLO, where you're almost exclusively involved in multi-way post flop scenarios, if you are in doubt with any part of your range, you want to think to yourself, if I get myself into a situation where I feel like I have to commit, am I dominating or flipping at worst, or am I flipping at best or dominated? And yeah, you could say for No Limit that's a similar thought process you could have. Some of you could start to use that if you're struggling, and that could help you a little bit. But the thing is, it is, I think, a little bit more relatable to PLO because the equities run a little closer together. PLO is a kind of 60-40 game, where No Limit's more like an 80-20 game when you're talking about domination. So with PLO, that's a thought process that I always like to use when I get involved in these spots. But let's not make this too long-winded. Let's get back to the set. So if I have middle set, that is obviously, it's a little bit different than bottom set, but it kind of depends on the texture. Like, for example, middle set on King, Queen, 8, there's going to be a lot of pocket kings that are played, as opposed to, let's say, 7-4 deuce, and you have middle set of 4s. There's not as often you're going to run into top set of 7s. So the texture, the card rankings, like that does matter a little bit. So yeah, if I had dry 4s on 7-4 deuce, you could definitely bet on that board if you're out of position, or even if you're in position. But again, if you have a dry set, if it's 7-4 deuce with a flush draw out there, you don't have a flush draw yourself. You don't block the flush draw. Let's say your backdoor equity is very minimal at best, like you don't have a lot of visibility with that, then again, you want to be very cautious. And that also honestly goes for top set too. Like, yes, if you get committed with top set, you are dominating or flipping at worst, and so that's fine. But if you guys are if you're in a game where stacks are very deep, and that tends to happen in these live PLO games, you also need to be a little bit careful with your top sets. And honestly, that will actually give you sort of like some balance to your range, where your opponent just can't like mindlessly barrel you if they're a very aggressive opponent, because you're going to be able to show up with like some top set, for example. But yeah, if you guys are, let's say, 500 big blinds deep, and it's going to be really hard to get stacks in, by the time like you get to the river or whatever, and your visibility is going to be really poor with like dry top set, then yeah, you can still start with betting small, or you can just call a bet in position and then see what comes on the turn and go from there. But top set, you can obviously be more aggressive. I'm not trying to say that you guys should be always passive with a dry top set. Exploitively, you honestly could just play that as fast as possible and you'd be all right. But really, with any of these dry sets, and that goes for probably even honestly like dry two pairs, the ranking of that category of hand will matter. The board texture will matter, like how often does your opponent have top set on king, queen, 8 when you have middle set as opposed to 7-4 deuce, so you have to think about that as well. But yeah, like if you guys get involved in these deep stacked multi-way action almost every time, these live listics PLO games, you definitely want to think to yourself, am I going to be dominating or flipping at worst when I get it in, or am I going to be flipping at best or dominated? And with these dry sets, if you have middle or bottom set and you're really deep, you have to really think about that a good bit before you decide to take any kind of committing action. But again, make sure that you think about what your hand is going to look like on turns and rivers. You should be thinking about that no limit anyway, but in PLO, that is going to matter even more so. Like position will be even more amplified. Your ability to realize your equity. So like really the reason that position is going to be so much more amplified in PLO, you're going to be able to honestly a lot of times over-realize your equity in position. Your opponents will under-realize theirs. So when you are out of position, and this is why it's really important to play a strong range in these PLO games from out of position. When you do end up with dry middle or bottom set, it's kind of like a check call scenario and check call down a lot of the time, and keeping the pot as small as possible, keeping it to where you're not putting too much money in the pot early to not be able to realize the equity that you have later on. Because one of the biggest mistakes I'll see, and I'll give you a practical example, is let's say on that king, queen, 8, we have a hand like 8-8, 6-6, and we flop dry bottom set, and it's a two-tone texture, so like there's a flush draw available. What will happen a lot of times is the guys that are transitioning from no limit to PLO, they will, let's say they did raise that hand in early position, and you get, let's say you are 3 ways in the flop on that king, queen, 8. What they'll do is they'll pot it, and then they don't think about what happens like if they're deep, and then even if like one or both players call behind them, or if let's say then a player raises behind you, like think about those scenarios. Like even if they just call, like what runouts do you really love? Like do you really love a queen or a king to make a boat? A lot of times that gives top 2 the better boat, and then you're in a lot of trouble. But like any of the straight or flush completing cards, those runouts are going to come a lot more often than not. And so you have to keep that in mind. Like you have to understand that, especially in PLO, it's not so much about what your hand looks like now and what your equity is now, but it's your ability to realize that equity and for your hand to be visible and playable on future streets. So keep that in mind. I know there's kind of like a few different things going on in this video with the dry sets, but that is a category of hand that's a good example to use for this, to help you guys understand some of these concepts. So, obviously this is meant to be kind of a quick video, as are all of these on the YouTube channel these days. If you guys please like this video, others will see it that are possibly struggling with PLO as maybe you are. Subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, come visit us over at archcitypoker.com, where I have a lot more content involving PLO, where I can definitely help you guys improve your games quite a bit. So appreciate you watching as usual. If there are any questions or comments, let me know down in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.